Rib or Dog Night Out, new book I'm working called Rib in Process, needs proofread, early release of material, chapter 36. Now, I just want to say this real before I begin. The story does really start around maybe chapter 29 or so, but there is some important stuff through chapter 1 through 29. It is very kind of out there, okay? And it does stray from the through line of these people. But now we're going to go ahead and read chapter 36. Buford T. Justice, shouting at the trucker that has sheared a door off his portal car. I saw that, you some bitch. You did that on purpose. You going away till you're gray. I got the evidence. Buford T. Justice speaks to Junior. Put the evidence in the car. Junior, but Daddy. Buford T. Justice, put the evidence in the car. Shout the trucker again. Buford T. Justice, I'm going to barbecue your ass in molasses. Shep ran his palm along Buster's head, peeling his floppy ears back, and then scratching along his jaw. Buster happily watched Smokey and the Bandit on the small flat screen in the wheel cabin. Yeah, good dog, Buster, Shep said, imitating Buford T. Justice. No text came in from the Lodestar hacker. Sorry, guys. He was the one who gave him the directions on where to bring in the interceptor before he left the fort. Shep sometimes called him a load of shit, hence Lodestar, because he turned on his department. He needed the cruiser to be clean, new, untouched by eternal trackers, clear of any possible way for the law to locate him. He freed Shep, saved him, kept him from prison. Shep was now the Bandit and no longer worked for Buford of his types. In actuality, his boss was not called Buford. He was called Lieutenant Charles Smith. His best buddy in the force was Matt. Matt leaned inward at the coffee bar. He snacked on a breakfast burrito and sipped on his beige thermal mug with a safety guard. It's going to be hard where you're going. Call this number. He'll help your truck out, fix it up. Remember that accident you got into? He knows everything about Ford SUVs, just like yours. He'll direct you. Don't need to know his name and all that. Don't even ask. This is all off the record. You need to fix your truck first. Got me, Shep? I care about you, bro. Don't want to see you get hurt. The dog growled. He was back to reality. Alaska. Fairbanks. Smokey and the Bandit on Netflix. Archie Rector. He was no longer Shep. What is it, girl? A few days ago, he went into Russell Feeds and Supplies and bought himself a brand new spotting scope with thermal capabilities. I'll take that spotting scope right here, the one in camo. You take American Express? The clerk nodded. He smiled as he exited the feed store with his new spotting scope. The driver back to the reservation was long. He took the back roads so no one would spot him along the line of pines where he kept the wheeled cabin. Got my new scope, boy. He grabbed the scope from above the sink next to the Canon camera. He attached the camera around his neck with a strap. Shep walked out to the knee-high snow with his new thermal scope and Canon. Shep sat his tripod and balanced the scope, screwing the sides in with his finger and then checking the sturdiness. Then he powered on the Canon, and it beeped, and the wind began to blow from the north. He looked up, spotting the dog star. He looked through the lens, and he saw the great polar bear in red, fuzzy, and brown yellows, and greens and oranges as it walked around in his thermal sight. The shape was wobbly and deformed, but the thermal had the outline of the polar. Gotcha, my great polar bear, Shep whispered as a dog came out of the cabin and sniffed his boots. Shep boot on his boots. The ice was numbing his toes. The boots were warm and protected him from the icy packed snow. which helped stand the tripod with near perfection. He stuck the camera into his lens of the scope and snapped a few photos, capturing the polar bear in thermal form. "Got her, boy." The dog smiled and huffed and whined and circled him, watching his every move. Cut to Jed sat on a canvas seat of the pop-out chair. Droopy sat on his seat. Surrounding the duo was ice. Both were inside an igloo on an icy lake somewhere west of Shep's wheeled cabin and New Wilderness home, about 30 miles or so. "You like ice fishing?" Jed said as he rotated the crank and allowed the drill to dig into the ice, and the water began to flow and seep upward. A rushing sound entered the igloo as the ice hole appeared. "Time to go fishing, Drippy." Jed dropped his sinker into the hole, then grabbed Droopy's fishing pole and did the same with his. 2 lines sunk under the icy water of the frozen lake. "Fish down there, boy?" "Never done this before." "I know you haven't. Smoke?" Jed offered him a cigarette and a yellow pack. "American Spirit, my favorite." "Nah." "All right." Jed stroked a match and lit the cigarette. "They say it's all natural, but I don't believe in them. Probably kill me one day. I try to keep it to 2 or 3 a day. Obama smoked 1 daily. He's doing real good in Hollywood, I hear, producing movies. Pretty tough for an ex-president." "I don't keep up with politics." Drippy looked down at his line and adjusted his grumpy old man hat. Jed wore a beige hat, the same. "Yep. I was a musician in Seattle. Then I started smoking meth. Then I went to a rehab and lost all my money. Now I smoke these American Spirits and sometimes weed, and occasionally beer here or there. I keep it all under control. Then I moved into my van and met the dwarf, and he began to train me." "What's your story, Drippy?" "I don't have one." "Why were you living in a trash can behind a 7-Eleven in Fairbanks?" I don't know. Didn't have a place of my own." "Come on, Drippy. You can open up with me. I once lived in Hollywood." "Hollywood, California." Jed sang. "Yep." "How long?" A while." "What you doing there?" "Extra work. I met an actor." "Really? What was his name?" "Adair." "What'd he do?" "Not much. He was a projectionist from Fort Worth, Texas, at least for a while. I met him in a jail in L.A. He got in trouble for stalking some fancy actress off of Mulholland Drive. I did yard work up there, too, along with Ventura, too, and other places in town, too. I hung out with Adair at a party and tried. I guess it was meth. And then I started just smoking shit. And then I got hooked until I couldn't really think right anymore. I ended up going off to Vegas with some Asian chick that didn't speak. I stayed around until I couldn't really think right anymore. And then I'd black out and wake up in odd places. Eventually, after getting rides up to Washington and after smoking too much shit, I ended up in Fairbanks on a fishing boat. Made a real good money and then smoked a lot of it. Then I moved out of my place up here and into the trash can you found me in. I use a solo stove to stay warm. They're nearly smokeless." "Huh." A moment. The fishing line yanked. "Looks like I got one." "Cool." Jed set the flipping fish down and stomped on its head. "You gonna learn to breathe under the ice?" "Huh?" "Yep. I'm gonna teach you to breathe under the ice. Wear this for me." Jed hands him a chain with a round, small, square box attached to it. "This is a GPS tracker, just in case I lose you in the current under there." He placed the chain around Droopy's neck as if he was awarding him a medal. "You want me to wear this?" "So I can find you later. You're going to be swimming under the ice in a few moments." "Say what?" "Yeah. You're going to learn to breathe under the ice." "How?" "Put these on." Jed opened his tote bag that laid at the base of the canvas tent chair. "Put these up on your feet." He handed him the rubber flippers. "I'm wearing these when you dive under." "I'm not going to do that." Droopy said in hesitation. Yeah, you are. Jed stared a hole in him and continued commanding. Later, I'm going to cut you out of the ice with the chainsaw. Jed rose a small chainsaw that lay next to the tote bag. It was cold and silent. It had silver metal teeth and cyclical edges. It was waiting to hum. I'm not going to swim under the ice, Droopy said, looking down at the ice in fear. Yeah, you will. Be sure to wear that when you do. Jed looked down with him. What you want to do is push up on the ice when you swim up. You can breathe on an air bubble. As long as you push and press up on the ice and put your lips up to the ice, literally touching the ice with your lips, you'll be able to breathe. If you don't panic, that's how you'll take your breaths until I cut you out of the ice. How are you going to get me to do that? Droopy asked Jed. Well, just hang on a minute. Jed stood up and adjusted his thermal overalls, straps, and ducks down and leaves the igloo entranceway. Droopy sat alone on the little chair with the fishing line sunk into the ice hole. I'm not going in, Droopy said, looking at the icy water in the hole in the center of the igloo. Yeah, you are, the voice of Jed hollered from outside of the icy abode. He crunched around outside. Droopy twisted his head toward the entranceway as the circus bear walked in happily, gnawing at the ice below and huffing at Droopy. Droopy reached for the flippers and jumped into the center hole of the igloo, disappearing into the black freezing water. Droopy's eyes watered over, and everything went hazy and hard and tight, and his nose clamped and he began to freeze. The sound of bubbles filled his head, and everything was dirty, black, and dark. He swam under the skin of the frozen lake. The chainsaw announced. Whistles arose, hissing, clicking, stomping. Then the saw dug through the frozen lid of the lake. Jed dropped in. He was in full scuba gear with goggles and breathing apparatus. He swam over to Droopy, who was floating like a babe, helpless, arms slowly sinking under the ice. The bear pawed at the open hole and growled at the water, hoping for a fish. Jed swam to Droopy and grabbed his arm, pulling him upward, sticking the mouthpiece in his lips. He stuck his face on the other side of the frozen lake. Pointing, he gurgled in the mouthpiece, taking slow breaths in and out. The bear watched from above. In the warm igloo. Tapping at the underside of the frozen lake, he showed him the air bubble. Breathe, Jed commanded, removing the mouthpiece from Droopy's mouth while underwater. Droopy lifted his lips toward the ice and found the air and breathed in under the frozen skin of the lake. They both swam under the ice and bubbles and the bear. Then Jed tucked him under to the underside of the igloo, which was reflecting the white icy round above in silvers and whites, and the big brown bear. Jed pushed up first, taking the mouthpiece out and setting the tanks on the floor of the floating igloo. Jed stuck his head through the hole and removed the long, thin whistle attached from the chain around his neck and hissed in it. The whistle blew a high note. The bear turned around and walked out of the icy abode, nearly robotic-like. Bailey was led away by a lady holding onto his chained neck. The cowbell rang into the dark of the Alaskan eve. She led Bailey across the frozen skin of the icy waters and into the shaded dark of the half-moon. Jed pulled on Droopy to lift back into the igloo. The diesel heater was still clicking away in the corner, warming. Get out! Get out! Jed commanded. Now you learn how to breathe under ice, and you got introduced to scuba training. You're a son of a bitch, Droopy said angrily. That was unreal. Woo-wee. Jed celebrated and began striking a match over and over until a blue flame ignited. He lit up a cigarette and huffed out the match. You lived. Congratulations, Droopy. You survived ice training. Want one? Droopy began drying off. You're a son of a bitch. I know I am. Woo-hoo. Okay.